When most people think of fantasy RPG games or adventure games, there's a few games I know right off the bat that I think people are going to think of. For me, my thoughts always divulge to the Legend of Zelda series, as this was the game series I grew up with. Some people prefer the more Western adventures that allow you to make your own choices in a large open world, such as Skyrim or the Elder Scrolls series. There's many games out there of this variety, but I think it's fair to say that if you ask someone this, one series that I think will come up more often than others will be Final Fantasy. And for many reasons too. Final Fantasy is a legendary franchise and a legendary series of games packed with different stories in each one and each release. Even older titles like Final Fantasy VI are still among one of my favorite games to play. I didn't get much of a chance to play the game series until much later in my youth, though I was aware of its existence. My first exposure to the series was Final Fantasy IV on the SNES, as previously mentioned, dubbed Final Fantasy II here in America. But I was also a dumb kid who didn't process anything that I was seeing in text form, so the only thing I knew was, "Rawr! Monster appear! Hit this button! What is jump? I don't know! Oh crap! Where'd he go? Holy shit! What's happening?" I didn't understand anything, and I never really had a long time or exposure to this game to understand what I was seeing. The only time I would be able to play this is when I went over to my cousin Steve's. The first game that actually roped me into the series was Final Fantasy IX when my brother and I acquired a PlayStation. We had previously played this game before at my cousin Steve's as well, but now we actually owned it and could play it from start to finish. That's when I fell in love with the series and eventually moved to titles like Final Fantasy X, and then went back to the older titles to see what I missed, going back to Final Fantasy IV on the Game Boy Advance. Although I feel Final Fantasy IX is a superior game to 7, at least in my opinion, Final Fantasy VII is a legendary title that I think propelled the series forward. It was the first 3D Final Fantasy and really helped the series move into different horizons that the other titles didn't. Cloud is one of the most popular characters to exist in the franchise, so much so that he got his own full sequel movie, which is, by the way, fucking awesome if you haven't seen it. Most people I know have played Final Fantasy VII before other titles. I was just not one of those people. It's a shame too, because when I bought my PSP some years back, I actually enjoyed it when I bought it on the PlayStation Store. So it sucks as a kid I never got a chance to fully experience the game in its entirety. But hey, better playing it now than never getting a chance to. For a long time, fans have been clamoring for a remake of Final Fantasy VII, and those fans are going to get their wish come April 10th of this year. It was supposed to be out this month, but... However, where this should make me feel happy, I'm actually worried about the series as a whole. You see, Square Enix's last two highly anticipated releases never fully delivered to the fans what they were hoping to get. Some of these games had issues, or there were notable design choices that the gamers did not enjoy. Other reasons include just not being able to live up to the hype. For a company that's widely known to make stellar releases, this is not normal, and it's happened now twice. So that's why in this video we're going to talk about why I think Final Fantasy VII Remake needs to be a perfect game. I'm not saying it for it to be great, and I'm not saying for it to be good. This game needs to hit every single mark on the table! And exceed them as well. Keep in mind, people who are watching this video is entirely subjective and just my opinion on the matter, along with anything I share on this video. You are free to disagree with any of my points presented here. I just think that Square needs to knock this one out of the park in all regards. If they fail to do so, this is going to look bad for them, which will actually now bring me to point 1 of the video. The first major reason why this game needs to be a knockout title in all regards is the fact that this is one of the flagship titles in the Final Fantasy game series. Although I like 9 more, 7 is the game that most people have heard about and have even played. People don't know about my boy Zidane as well as they know about characters like Cloud and Sephiroth. They also know which game Cloud and Sephiroth come from, and it's supposed to be one of the best entry in the series. So how do you think it's going to look if the remake everyone has been talking about, with all the features that are in there, ends up being a subpar release or even a flop? It's just not going to look good. Even more so, the internet and everyone in its entirety knows for a fact that they have been demanding a proper remake of the game for many years now. If anything goes awry, the faith in the game, as well as the series, could be called into question by not just the fans, but the outliers who might be wanting to get into the game. The second major reason goes back to an earlier point I established with 4.1. Square has released two major games over the last couple of years that most people I spoke to did not live up to the hype that they were supposed to have. Final Fantasy 15 has been hyped on ever since its original Final Fantasy Versus 13 trailer made its appearance. And since then, this game has had an infamous legacy of just outright being never released.
Maybe if Nomura actually did something instead of drag out development, it could have been a real thing. Good job, by the way.
I know people and the fans of the series don't like Tabata at all, but Nomura, in my opinion, was just not getting anything done. Let's just be real here. Tabata got the game in a working state and got it released. Did it make the game unappealing and disappointing in a lot of places? Yes, a lot of people have told me that they were not thrilled about it, and the game speaks for that itself. Did Kingdom Hearts 3 feel lacking at times and didn't meet anyone's expectations? Yes, a lot of people have told me that and did not enjoy it as much as they could have had. Could these reasons be relating to having too high of expectations in these said games? Possibly. I can agree to that. Though thankfully, in the game's regards, the final mixed remind release of Kingdom Hearts 3 has been praised by fans as a critical success. But if these were two highly anticipated games from the very get-go and had mixed reception at its release, I don't think that's a good sign for it. Keep in mind, these are not bad games. They are both playable and both have intriguing stories that I think anyone who enjoys a good fantasy epic will have fun with. All I'm saying is these games just did not live up to the fans' hype, which is an unfortunate reality considering how long the development for these games took. Thankfully, none of the games went through development hell enough to the point where they were unplayable or just unenjoyable. So if you're interested, feel free to try them out. They're great games, they're just not what the longtime fans would have wanted, or thought they were going to get from the original trailers. Okay, so this next point I think is actually going to be the big one that most people will probably agree with me. Even if you're a fan of the series and you haven't liked this video at all for any of the reasons I've posted, I think people will probably care about this one. The next reason is how they plan to release the game. Final Fantasy VII Remake is not going to be a complete release come April 10th. It's going to be released over parts until it eventually reaches the game's conclusion. This is sort of how the PlayStation game was released on multiple discs because the discs were not capable of holding all the data for the game. Despite, however, it's not going to be a complete release, however, the game is still going to cost $60. Even more so, the data usage on this game is already going to be insane. The demo itself is already reported to have 100 gigabytes worth of data, rapidly filling up anyone's PS4 or Xbox One. Ooh, yikes. They're not even going to get the Xbox One release this year. Now, this isn't as bad as it should be, except that Square Enix has yet to unveil whether or not we will have to pay for the subsequent parts of the games as well. Knowing how businesses tend to work, I'm pretty sure we're going to have to. As an example, let's say that we have to pay for each part of the game, and let's be generous and assume the parts after the first time release will cost less. A modern game costs $60, so that's $60 right away. Then, let's be gracious and assume the other parts will cost $20, $30. If the game assumably has 3 parts like the original disc on the PlayStation, then this is a $120 investment for a complete game. That's insane. For me, a game is worth playing based on how much money I put into it. If I put $60 into the game, I would want to at least put 60 hours into it. If I didn't, then it wasn't a good purchase for me. Some exceptions, of course, could exist for this rule. For example, if Nintendo releases a Zelda game, I will gladly murder everyone in line at GameStop faster than GameStop can murder GameStop to be the first in line to get it, and I don't even care if I spend 10 hours, I still got to play as Link and save Zelda. There. Best investment ever. I am great with money. I am not great with money. If the game for me is bad and I had to invest this much money into it just to see it was bad or unappealing, then I wasted my money and now I'm angry. But of course, me being the Zelda fanboy, I would never be able to tell the difference. Except for the CDI games, but thankfully I wasn't stupid enough to invest into that. And this is just assuming that they're going to pay less. If we have to pay $60 for each release, this could be a $180 investment. If it actually reaches that price, I don't think anyone I know is actually going to buy the game. Because it just won't be worth the time. We're not at that age anymore where we can spend hundreds of hours on these kind of stories. You know, in relation to that point, and the game is divided out in parts, another question I want to ask is how long are we going to be able to have to play the game when it comes out? Like, how long is each part going to be in, or how much time can we be expected to put in? Are we going to have a meaningful experience in each part? Midgar is not a super big part of Final Fantasy VII, or at least it didn't feel like that for me. If we have the same amount of time that we would have expected in the PlayStation 1 game, then that noise. This game is supposed to be big from what we understand from the demo's release. However, all this data that is in the game could just be cinematics and just assets, background stuff, not necessarily meaningful content. I truly hope each part of the game has loads of content for each player to enjoy, because if the part isn't long enough to justify the expense, then there's no way this game's going to do well, no matter what the critical reception is out there. Final Fantasy VII Remake is coming around the corner, and while I'm seriously hyped to see this game remade in its entirety, I'm a little worried that it may not deliver on this end. This game, like the other two mentioned, has already had a very long development cycle, and I can see this going the same way as the other two. Which is unfortunate because a lot of time and effort went into the development of this game and just people may not even like it. There's many examples of games that have a long development time that just absolutely destroy the experience. A great example of a game that had a long development cycle and fell flat, look no closer to Duke Nukem Forever.
Hail to the king, baby.
What about the game, Duke? Was it any good?
Yeah, but after 12 years, it should be.
Thankfully, games Square released are still great games, and that one was not as much as one. I mean, it was pretty much just enjoyed by me when I bought it, and none of my friends really cared about it. And I didn't even think it was a good game, I just thought it was hilarious. And then there's games that have long development cycles or long times before like a sequel is made that actually do really good. If you want to know a game that had a very long development cycle and actually did well, look no further than StarCraft II Wings of Liberty. For me, when I played this game, this hit every single nail on the head. And its last entry was in 1998 on the computer, 12 years beforehand. It was just an absolutely incredible game for me, who was like really into StarCraft at that point, and it's just like, oh my god. Oh man. While that experience eventually waned over each edition due to the issues with Blizzard, and my own and this is of course also with my own tastes in games shifting away from RTS, the game was still fun.
Hail. It's about time.
I truly hope this game, which we don't even know how long was in development for, is loved by every fan upon its release. Because I would love nothing more for Final Fantasy VII Remake to succeed and surpass everyone's expectations. And thankfully we have good news in that regard, because it sounds like the demo has been loved by everyone. And in the end, that's all we want, is to reimagine what 1997 was like, when Final Fantasy VII first hit the store shelves.